Imagine this. 200,000 people packed inside the Maracanazo Stadium. Brazil is playing at home. The whole country is waiting for one thing, to become world champions. But then, silence. Not normal silence. The kind of silence that feels impossible. Because in 1950, Brazil lost the World Cup on their own soil to Uruguay. And that one match didn't just break a team, it broke an entire nation. But somewhere in São Paulo, a 9-year-old boy was listening to that match on the radio. Beside him, his father was crying. And that little boy made a promise. One day he would win the World Cup for Brazil. That boy's name was Pelé. To understand Pelé's greatness, we have to go back to the wound that created his dream. The 1950 World Cup was strange from the beginning. 16 teams were invited, but only 13 actually played. India, Turkey, and France withdrew, leaving the tournament with an unusual format. There were no normal semifinals and no traditional final. Instead, the winners of the groups entered a final round, where the team with the most points would become world champion. Brazil entered that final stage as the favorite. They had the talent, the crowd, the momentum, and most importantly, they had the Maracanazo, one of the biggest stadiums in the world. On the final match day, Brazil faced Uruguay. Brazil only needed a draw to win the World Cup. Uruguay needed victory. At first, everything looked perfect for Brazil. They scored early in the second half. The stadium exploded, but Uruguay refused to disappear. Their captain, Obdulio Varela, gathered his players and pushed them forward. Then Uruguay equalized, and later, Alcides Gigia scored the second goal. Brazil won, Uruguay 2. 200,000 people. Silent. That match became known as the Maracanazo, the Maracana blow. A football tragedy Brazil would never forget. But for a young boy named Pelé, that pain became fuel. 8 years later, in 1958, Brazil arrived at the World Cup in Sweden with a 17-year-old teenager in the squad. Many people thought it was a mistake. Reporters questioned why Brazil would trust a kid on the biggest stage in football, and at first, it looked like they were right. Pelé missed the early matches because of injury, but when he finally returned against the Soviet Union, the world got its first glimpse of something special. He helped create Brazil's attack and assisted Vava as Brazil moved forward. Then came the quarterfinal against Wales. Wales defended with everything. Brazil struggled to break them down. The match was tight, tense, and frustrating. Then in the 66th minute, Pelé did something magical. A 17-year-old controlled the ball and scored a beautiful goal. Brazil advanced. In the semi-final against France, Pelé exploded. He scored a hat trick and announced himself to the world. Then came the final against Sweden, the host nation. And once again, Pelé delivered. He scored twice, including one of the most iconic goals in World Cup history. Brazil won 5-2. For the first time ever, Brazil became world champion. That promise made by a crying father's son had come true. But Pelé wasn't finished. In 1962, Brazil won the World Cup again, but Pelé got injured early in the tournament and couldn't play a major role. In 1966, things got worse. Pelé was fouled heavily, injured again, and Brazil were eliminated early. After that, Pelé was done. He told the world he didn't want to play in another World Cup. But then came 1970, and football changed forever. Brazil arrived in Mexico with one of the greatest teams ever assembled. This was not just a team. It was football as art. In the group stage, Brazil beat Czechoslovakia 4-1, defeated England 1-0, and overcame Romania 3-2. Pelé scored 3 goals in those games and looked reborn. In the quarterfinal, Brazil beat Peru 4-2. Then came the semifinal against Uruguay. For Brazil, this was personal. Uruguay was the nation that had created the Maracanazo 20 years earlier. And now, Pelé's Brazil had a chance to answer that old pain. Brazil won 3-1. Revenge was complete. Then came the final against Italy. Many believed Italy could challenge Brazil. They had just survived the famous game of the century against West Germany in the semifinal. They were strong, experienced, and dangerous. But against Brazil, even Italy couldn't keep up. Pelé opened the scoring with a powerful header. Italy equalized, but Brazil kept moving the ball with rhythm, confidence, and beauty. Then, Brazil took control. And near the end, they produced one of the greatest team goals ever seen. The ball moved from player to player across the pitch with perfect timing. Pelé received it near the box, paused, and calmly rolled it into the path of Carlos Alberto. Carlos Alberto smashed it into the net. Brazil 4, Italy 1. World champions again, Pelé had won his 3rd World Cup. Something no player in history has matched. But here's what makes Pelé different. He wasn't just a goal scorer. He was the symbol of Brazil's transformation. From the pain of 1950 to the glory of 1958, 1962, and 1970, Pelé became the bridge between heartbreak and greatness. A boy who once watched his father cry became the man who made an entire nation smile. And that is why Pelé is not remembered only as a footballer. He is remembered as the king.